Welcome to Screenshot. This is week 4 of a series of virtual artist talks led by Scope of Work. The goal of Screenshot is to highlight how SOW members and creative veterans are managing their creative identities through this global crisis. It's meant to be an intimate window into an artist's work and their creative practice from the privacy of their homes. The goal of Screenshot is to highlight, I just said that. Logistically, SOW is taking place twice a week for the next 6 weeks and always features one SOW member and one veteran creative. Every screenshot is 30 minutes long, and the feature artist will present some examples of their work and answer a series of questions, and then share a tool, skill, or best practice related to their creative practice. All the members on this call have been muted in order to ensure that our featured artist can present uninterrupted. If you have questions, please put them in the chat and I will ask them for you during the Q&A portion. Big thanks to those of you who submitted questions via Instagram. Ray will be answering those too. And so I'm very, very proud to introduce you to Rey Carlson. Ray is a Chinese-American designer, researcher, and writer based in Richmond, Virginia. Hold on. There's a very loud motorcycle coming by. Their work explores the subjects of queer culture, research, and writing in relation to cultural identity and tradition. Rey was a SOW fellow last summer when they were placed at Mother, an independent ad agency here in New York City. And Rey graduated this past weekend, so happy graduation, congratulations. We love you and we'll let you take it from here.
Hi everyone. So I have just like a presentation, so I'm just gonna screen share. And okay. So this is my bio. I know Geneva just read it, but yeah, just so you see it one more time. I do a lot of sort of like research and writing in my practice, and that's a really large portion of it. But just to kind of go through a little bit of background on me. So yes, I just graduated literally like last week. Thank you. And yeah, I graduated from VCU Arts Department of Graphic Design. And so currently I'm in Richmond. I'm moving literally at the end of this month to Brooklyn, which feels crazy and insane, but I'm very excited. And as far as COVID, I think it's been definitely hard working and making during this time, just like everyone else. I think it was especially hard because I was trying to do a thesis and stuff like that and expected to have this big kind of show-stopping thing, and then that idea of like it's not in person anymore, and we had to sort of change like scope of a lot of things. So I think a lot of my output right now is definitely different than what it would have been if I could like make and have things physical and in person and like sort of share them the way that I wanted to. But I can talk more about that probably specifically with like my thesis project, which I'll get to later. As far as keeping myself clear and calm, honestly, I've been playing a lot of Animal Crossing, like an absurd amount of Animal Crossing. I have been baking, not bread, just like a lot of cookies and like other little things, but those two things, watching movies a lot. My partner and I are watching like all of the old Barbie movies because they're amazing. But yeah, so this is sort of just my work experience, none of my own work, but just going through places I've interned at and stuff like that. So like Geneva said, I worked for Mother Design last summer for my SOW fellowship, and it was like a really new experience. It was the first time that I worked like 9 to 5 at a place every single day for like the summer, and I worked specifically mostly on this project called Bodily, and it's basically like a resource. It's a website that people that are pregnant or have recently given birth can use to buy like any kind of items that they'll need during or after pregnancy. And also it's like it works as a resource for a lot of information, like surrounding your body during that time. But I mainly worked on like the package design. I came in sort of like at the tail end of that project. So yeah, I worked on a lot of different kind of like boxes and bags and like topicals and things like that, that went with that project. This was like after the main identity was created. So yeah. And then I also do work for Nancy Kalelo Mutiti. She was my professor, LOL, at VCU, and she's also just like a really incredible like mentor to me. But she is a Zimbabwean designer, and I think her origin was in painting actually, but she has a lot of client work and does a lot of exhibitions and other kinds of things, and I help her basically as like an assistant with whatever she's working on. So this is her braiding work, which is like it's been around, or she's been doing this project specifically for, I don't even know, since like 2012, but we're basically turning them into letters, into gifts, into, this is an exhibition that we did recently in Baltimore. So I've helped with a lot of technical aspects of her work in this project specifically, but also just like install for exhibitions and stuff like that, which is really interesting. I can show you a little bit of what I'm currently doing for her, just so you can see like the process. She's doing a, I'm not sure if this is actually, she doesn't tell me all the info all the time. She like gives me a lot of notes on Trello, or like we'll call and she'll tell me what to do, and then I sort of just do it. But she's doing like the braiding in Arabic for, I'm guessing, in exhibition somewhere. But basically she just gave me this photo, and then I was supposed to trace it, and then this is what it looks like on its own, and then this is what it looks like in the braiding pattern. So this is just like a little bit of what I do for her. Like this is, I work for her twice a week, and then this is like another instance of it. So I also just work very organized in my boards and things like that. But this, yeah, some more tracings, and then this is what it looks like in the braiding, if you can see that. Sorry, my computer is like freaking out a little bit. I don't know if you can hear it. But yeah, so that's what I do for her. This was another installation that we did on campus. It was like a faculty research kind of thing. She does a lot of research around Dembudzo Marachera, who's a Zimbabwean writer, or like a very famous one. So yeah. And then this is some of my work. So this is the first project I wanted to share with y'all. It's a book called Legends, and I made this last spring, actually for a class, but I sort of also just want to talk about this idea of like, if you're in school, I think it's really important to sort of shift and mold projects to ways that will benefit you and suit you, and instead of like just answering a prompt in a way that, you know, like isn't interesting at all to you. Like I always care about finding a way to make work that interests me and benefits me in my own kind of research. So this book was basically a lot of researching about like canonical queer legends and myths and gods that exist in Chinese culture. So this was a lot of research and trying to find kind of like scraps of like anything like queer or trans in like history. But I think that was also like something that was really important to me, was like knowing that like this kind of representation does exist in history and culture, but it's just kind of buried. So it's just a matter of finding it. And I think that's like what's really important to me in research, is like knowing that what I'm looking for is out there, but it's just kind of like, it is kind of like the frustration of like finding it, or like the fact that it is so rare. But yeah, so this was that project. This is what it ended up looking like. I sold it at like our program had a small print fair, and then I did Richmond Zine Fest at the fall of, I think, 2018 and 2019, and sold it there. And then I also sold it at Printed Matter's LA Art Book Fair, and then New York Art Book Fair last fall. This is just like another spread from that book. Yeah, I'm not like an illustrator also. I just want to say, but yeah, this project, I also made a little bit of like other print or like merchandise kind of things. These are like buttons, and I made a poster. This is like a risographed print that is really exciting. But yeah. And then this is my thesis project. It's called Jade in the Grass, and it's basically a lot about like altars, rituals, and also just kind of my own healing practices in the ways of like personal writing and archiving, and going through my own kind of like history and memory, and kind of the importance of documentation of those things. These are just kind of like promotional images that we made for like our class had a site and like a catalog book. This is the site, but I can just go ahead and show y'all the actual thing. So yeah, it's called Jade in the Grass. I'm not a coder. I do want to say that, but I was really just proud of how this turned out, not being a coder. But basically this left side is all like my personal writings, and for more you can go to like this section. It's under body. I kind of organized this site based on principles of like rituals and like healing, and in Buddhist practice, like there's this idea of like you're split into like body, mind, and speech. So that's how I organized the site. So these are all just kind of my writings about, I don't know, a lot of different things. I'm mixed. So that kind of like makes its way into a lot of my work. A lot about like my relationship with my mother. I think a lot of it is like very queer just because I'm queer, and I think inherently it kind of like ties that into everything that I make. I won't like read into it, but this side is all research, basically things that I found, things from my own kind of personal archive. And then these are all links going outwards into things that I didn't want to just load onto the site, but I like are really important, or like mean something to me, or I just think are very good reads. There are some articles in here that I think are really important. This one is called Women Touching Women on Screen. It's a really, really good article. And then just like lots of other things. I found some like old like Chinese photos of lesbians, which like are really important. I spent a long time looking up like traditional Chinese gay porn, and like this idea of like there's always more men than women, or like that idea of only having scraps. And then this is to a really beautiful book with this one quote that I really liked, to all the queers who broke my heart and to all the queers who mended it. But yeah, this is my site. This was like my culmination, like thesis project. Yeah, so go back. And then this is the last project I wanted to share with y'all. This is a book called Qing Shi, which she was basically like a famous, or like the most successful pirate in history, and she was a Chinese woman. I made this book last summer, planning to like sell it at the New York Art Book Fair, which was in September. And this one sort of started, I was kind of I think my partner was watching that one pirate show. Oh my gosh, I can't remember what it's called. It's on Hulu, but I don't know. As far as like inspiration, I don't necessarily come from just like looking at design or like having this idea. It sort of like comes organically, or like I'm thinking about other media or inspired by other things. I literally cannot remember the show. Might have been like Vikings, but yeah. So my partner was watching a pirate show, and it got me thinking about how in Pirates of the Caribbean there was like this one woman Chinese pirate, like, and she was based off a real person, and so I ended up doing all of this research about her, and her family, who she married, which is like this other really crazy story, kind of like the downfall of her fleet. um yeah, I specifically, this is just really crazy because she like married this man and they adopted this other guy who, like, the man she was married to and like her like adopted son, like they were rumored to be queer together. And then like when her husband died, also like mysteriously she like exed the adopted son and like married him, so like he was no longer her son, and then married him. It's really crazy when you start researching stuff. um, but yeah, so these are just like some spreads. Obviously like no photos of her because it was in the 1800s, but a lot of drawings and stuff like that. But yeah, so that's my work. As far as tips and tricks, I think one thing that they always just talk about in school, but also in general, if you're making things that are physical, I always recommend scanning, is like primarily for books. Also, it just makes everything like color editing and stuff like that, like lighting, it's just so much easier. But good documentation is really, really important overall. My professors always say that like 90% of people that see your work are going to be viewing it online or like through a screen. So it's really important to have good documentation of it. Two, I talked a little bit about this before, but just like, please, I think it's so important to make things that you care about. I really, like, I could never make something that doesn't interest me. So like as far as like addressing assignments and prompts and things like that, like, and also professors kind of know this too. Like one time I was like asked to do a how-to video, and then I sort of went down this idea of like how to worship, which also like informed a lot of my thesis, like that research. But she, like, my professor was very like, if you don't want to answer the prompt in a like very literal way, don't do it. Like if it doesn't help or isn't like generative, like don't do it. Like find ways that work for you, and find subjects that interest you, and not just like a how to. Like for me, a lot of people were making how to's on like how to brush your teeth or something. I was like, that's not what my work is about. But yeah, and then three, if you can't make, like, take a break. And also, I didn't mean for that to rhyme, but like especially in this time, and as someone who had to literally make a thesis during COVID, like taking a break is so important, and forcing yourself to work when everything seems really up in the air, or I don't know, I kept thinking about all of these assignments, and then just the idea that we're like in a pandemic right now, and it just, I don't know, sometimes it just feels ridiculous, and that's totally valid. And like taking a break is just as much of a big part of like your creative process as the actual making part. Also, like another one for like researching, if you're in school right now, take advantage of your school's resources for like doing research and stuff like that. Also, like Google Scholar has really good kind of like what is that, like peer reviewed articles and things like that. But yeah, take advantage of everything you have while you're in school. But yeah, that's all I have for y'all. Thank you for coming.
Right.
And yeah,
That's so beautiful. Great job.
thank you.
So I have a question from Instagram, and then everyone who's in the talk, go ahead and start entering any questions you might have in the chat. The first question is, a lot of your work is print, books, posters, packaging, etc. Do you prefer that over digital?
I think those were things that like I enjoyed a lot the past few years. I have made like videos and things like that that are on my site that I'm also really interested in. And I also like, I know like Eden and Geneva know this, but I'm doing a talk in like an hour just performing like my writing. So those are definitely like other things that I do and other ways that my work kind of like creative or my like creativity manifests. I think as far as a job, yeah, print work is kind of like what I prefer or what's easy. But as far as like digital work, I guess I'm interested in videos. I'm interested, like I make, GIFs and stuff like that, like motion stuff, but my expertise isn't in like coding or anything like that.
That makes sense. So Darren wants to know, first he says he loves Nancy, which who doesn't? His question is, do you make a pattern brush to put it on the lines? If so, how does she or you start the pattern?
Yes. So she made the original pattern brush and then I've made a few different versions of it. I don't know if Darren's here. I can actually just like sort of show you. Oh, hi. Okay. Yes, there's like a master file that we made with the brushes. I'm just going to share. Okay, so this is our master file with the brushes. As you can see, they're just a little bit different, but basically like these top two right here, you can make like as shapes, and then there's a way you can create a brush where it like, when you draw a line, those two shapes will just like repeat, if that makes sense. So it's actually really easy. And I mean, all of this work like isn't necessarily easy, but actually making the brushes is really easy and it's really cool, like what you can do with them. But yeah, Nancy's amazing. I love her. I'm so grateful to be working on these projects. They're super cool. But yeah.
Jasmine wants to know what the best piece of advice you ever received was.
Oh my gosh. Oh no, I don't know.
Or I. No, I'm just kidding.
I think, gosh, I don't know. I honestly, yeah, I don't know. That's not like something I'm honestly into really, is like I always kind of forget like with mantras or like advice or things like that. I'm not like a person that holds on to quotes, if that makes sense. I think there are like tons of things that I could say around like design or stuff like that. One that Eric Hu specifically, or this isn't his quote, but like I heard it from Eric Hu, who's a famous designer, but he always says like, good design gives more than it takes. I think that one's really interesting, especially when we start thinking about like us being people of color or like queer people or marginalized people, like, and the idea of like reproducing or, like taking, I think that one's really interesting. But as far as like life quotes, I'm not really sure. Yeah.
That's a great answer. Mitson wants to know, do you have any digital organization tips? How do you organize your files and projects?
Right. I did kind of forget to show my own personal one, which I can show now. I am like the most organized person. I have a Virgo rising, also Nancy's a Virgo. So that's why whenever we work together, all of our files are like extremely organized, like everything's on a board. It all makes sense. It's very like linear kind of thing. This is how I work, which is, also just like very clean. Everything stays on a board. um, but I do use like Pinterest, and I use Arena like a little bit. Honestly, I think it's a little bit unintuitive. Or like, yeah, I just think Pinterest is a little bit easier. I guess I can show. I know a lot of other people have shown Pinterest. This is like for my thesis, this was like my Pinterest. This was like at the bottom is when I thought we were going to have a physical thesis. So I was really excited about making physical things. I do use Arena a little bit. This was like, I like it more for links though. Like when I'm looking at websites, or like really like websites, because you can have links, but honestly, I don't use Arena that much. But yeah, I just work very organized.
Okay. Do you feel like your fellowship experience informed or challenged your work? And if so, in what ways? That's a really good question.
Yes. One thing I sort of forgot to talk about, but I also think is really important, is like that idea of my work is so different from commercial work, or like what I do for other people. And I think like when I went in that first day, we did basically just like a bunch of quick like logo sketches, which is not at all like what I do on my own or what I've done in school. Like my education personally was like super conceptual and honestly not that technical. Like I've learned a lot of technical skills on my own. But I definitely think of my work, like my own personal work, is very separate from what I do for a job and what I did for that internship. I did learn a lot and it did sort of challenge me, but I think it's also important to keep those things separate. And like, I think that's also just a lesson that I learned in general, because you can get really disappointed if like your direction doesn't get chosen at your job or like stuff like that. But it's also like, part of me was like, okay, but if I was doing this on my own, it wouldn't look anything like this anyway. I don't know. I think that it's definitely sort of hard when you start thinking about like commercializing your work, if that makes sense. But yeah.
Yeah. When producing your work, what program do you start with and which program do you end with?
It definitely depends on what the project is. For books, I always just use InDesign. I mean, I edit photos in Photoshop. Um, I'm like, Photoshop is actually the first program that I learned. So I know a lot of people hate on it because it's like super unintuitive or like whatever. But like I started making graphics and designing, literally making like fan like graphics for TV shows and movies like Harry Potter and the Hunger Games, like stuff like that. So I personally love Photoshop. Sorry, I didn't expect to be talking about this. But I think, yeah, for books, always InDesign. For posters and any kind of like small print media, I honestly always just go with Illustrator. And then, yeah, I mean, if I'm editing photos that will go in a book, you know, I'll edit them in Photoshop, export them, and then put them in InDesign wherever the book is. But it's pretty, like, everything's pretty separate, honestly.
Jordan asked, what coding language did you use for your site?
Yeah, no, I don't code. That was actually, it's on Cargo. So Cargo has a lot of templates, and I know also some people don't think that Cargo is intuitive, but for me, it works really, really well. And I do, well, I know I say that I don't code like over and over. I cannot code, like I can't code a site from scratch, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I understand like the very, very basics, and because I was like on Tumblr in middle school and stuff like that, like I can understand how to like center something or italicize it or change the color or like kind of simple stuff in code, but like I definitely cannot code something from scratch and like Cargo makes it pretty easy. Also, they have a lot of tutorials if you're interested in doing like a lot of the kind of like, I don't know, like hot design kind of shit like that you're interested in right now, like moving text or like on my site right now, I can share it. They have like, I have like the hover like image link kind of thing going on. I don't really know what to call it, but basically when you hover over a link, an image will pop up. So for me, like I used it to preview my projects like this. When you hover over the title, the like how the project is will show up. But yeah, there's a lot of tutorials and they make it really easy on Cargo, honestly. This is not sponsored, but yeah.
Thank you, Jordan. We'll email you the survey. Medi wants to know how you're challenging yourself and your artwork during the pandemic.
I'm gonna be really straight up. I'm not doing a lot of personal creative work right now. I'm doing just like a little bit of writing, and one of my friends actually does like, he has this idea of like doing a daily kind of creative practice, whether it's really, really small or really, really big. So that is like something I was interested in doing like the past few months, is just writing a little bit like every day if I can, but also I don't really like enforce it. And because I literally just finished school and I am still working for Nancy like twice a week, I have like this client job for SOW actually, and like all these other things, I'm not really making books right now or like posters or like other kind of personal work. And I think also part of that is just like the burnout from school and like the timing of all of this. It's like, yeah, I'm like allowing myself to just sort of take a break from that kind of work.
That's important. Everybody needs to rest when they need to rest.
Yeah.
Okay, the last question is, did your mixed race identity inspire your process for your thesis, and how?
I wouldn't necessarily say process. It didn't like inform the process of my thesis. It definitely inspired the like content and what actually went into it. A lot of the writing that I do surrounding my mom, honestly, is kind of about being mixed, or like I talk about this idea of like, I don't look like my mom, or like, you know, when I'm in grocery stores with her and people don't think that we're related, or like stuff like that, which is just like very common kind of like mixed kid thing. I think, yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say like the process. I think the way that it turned out was a little bit more informed by like rituals and yeah, stuff like that, and not necessarily like being mixed. Though I guess I could see how that kind of relates. I guess how it looks visually is very like half and half, or like the screen is split. But yeah.
Wow, I didn't even put that together. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and it's like two worlds kind of moving at the same time.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, so that was it. You did it. You killed it. Ida has just put the survey in the chat. Please, everybody, do the survey. It's been really helpful to hear what you guys are learning. Rey, thank you for your time and intention and showing us your beautiful work.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry.
Rey. I'm going to send out an interest email form about the coloring book brief. So everyone that's on here, if you're interested, definitely let us know. I don't know if we can say.
Yeah, we're doing a coloring book. We sent you an email about it. Rey is going to be the one that designs it. So she's going to take all of your submissions and make it into this beautiful digital coloring book. So if you want to work with Rey, submit something. But yeah, so keep an eye on your email. We love you. Rey, you did such a good job.
Thank you. And thanks everyone for coming.